Now I'm going to introduce our next guest. It's going to be um, master sound therapist Wayne Perry. He has been in the sound healing game world situation for over 30 years. He began as a musician and he's transformed his practice into helping people realign to their own inner harmony through using vocal practices, vocal entrainment, vocal exercises. His amazing book, Sound Medicine, is all about letting yourself reharmonize and come into your own inner vibration. And so, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you guys the amazing Wayne Perry. Wayne, thank you so much for joining me and for being here with us. I'm going to make you the main screen here.
Here we are. Are we connected here?
Yep, you are the spotlight. Here you go, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brian, for this wonderful opportunity. It was some lovely uh, bowls and gongs and sounds there from Ava. And happy to be with you guys today. And I want to talk to you a little bit about sound therapy principles and practices. And just a few brief minutes about my background. I started established the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles, the first sound therapy center in California in 1992, 28 years ago, after a couple of years of researching and doing a radio and television show where I was interviewing healers and shamans and anybody on the cutting edge. I was like a kid in a candy store. And when I discovered sound and bioacoustics, which is the study of the frequencies that emanate from living organisms, I was very excited about this opportunity. And I remember reading in college that sound will be the medicine of the future. And I thought, well, the future is now. And I was in one of the first practitioner trainings in California, one of 17 people studying bioacoustics. I became certified. I actually went to Phoenix and was recertified. And initially, I started out using sound machines that were researched to be the most effective sound machines, a self-management auditory device that was shown to be more effective than the Tesla coils and the Rife generators and a lot of the things that were going on at the time. And so, I invested thousands of dollars in this sound machine, and I used it for about 5 or 6 months until I discovered when I had a kidney stone attack, which was one of the reasons I got involved in it to help heal my kidney stones. And I didn't get any benefit at all, didn't even relieve the pain. And I was thinking that old quote, physician, heal thyself. And how am I going to help anybody else? I can't even help myself. So I was meditating and trying to relieve myself from the pain. And all of a sudden, I started hearing these sounds, and it sounded like they were coming from behind me. And then I realized shortly thereafter they were coming from me, and they were unlike any sounds I made as a jazz singer in Chicago. And my background as a singer and recording artist, this was something really unusual, and I hadn't read any books on toning or harmonics at the time. And I passed my kidney stone in one day, the first day that I had it. And the previous 7 years, every year I had to go through a process of taking vitamin B6 and magnesium to soften and shrink the stones and to avoid surgery. And it would take me 7 or 8 weeks to pass the stone without surgery, which was successful, but it wasn't fun going through that every year for 7 or 8 weeks. And so then the first year I have my sound machine, the sound machine doesn't work, but my voice does. I'm like channeling these tones, and I get up to use the bathroom, and bing, bam, boom, I passed the stone immediately. And I confirmed it the next day at UCLA Medical Center that I in fact, passed a calcium oxalate stone. And then I wanted to get to the source of why my body was creating stones. So I used my sound experiments and my sound work to get to the source. And I haven't had a kidney stone attack in all those years, and whatever it's been, 26, 27 years since that kidney stone. So I went on to heal many things in my life. I'm like a walking testament to sound therapy and its benefits. I've healed myself over the years of lung disease. I was on oxygen for over 2 years, 24/7. I healed that. I've healed hepatitis C. I had contracted around 19, or no, around 2001. And it was when I discovered it. I think I contracted it back in the early 1990s or late 1980s, and because I was very healthy and vegan, I didn't have any symptoms, but I had it for probably 12, 13 years without even knowing it. And the doctors told me I couldn't heal it, and I proceeded to, heal myself of hepatitis C, healed my lungs. I was also on dialysis. I had kidney malfunction. They told me I'd be on dialysis the rest of my life, and I healed my kidneys and got off dialysis to my doctor's amazement. So I'm very passionate about sound therapy. It's not only have I been able to heal some major illnesses, but I've since traveled the world doing my workshops and private sessions in Europe and Asia. I did a sound healing workshop and concert tour of Bulgaria a couple years ago. I've recently been doing workshops in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Shanghai. The people there are very open-minded. And I want to point out that, sound therapy, unlike a lot of people that claim to be sound healers, is very specific. Specificity is one of the most important characteristics of successful sound therapy. Uh, Unfortunately, there's good news. Well, you could say there's good news and bad news over the last decade or 2 decades. When I started doing this work 28 years ago, people would laugh and say, yeah, your sound or your recordings or your voice or whatever is going to heal my arthritis or my tumor or whatever, that, serious health problems, and nobody took it seriously. And so I worked to explain, I do a lot of free events to explain the process of sound therapy, the diagnostic aspects and the therapeutic aspects, which are equally important. And I often liken sound to food. You can eat the healthiest food in the world, but guess what? If you don't eliminate that food, you're going to die. So what leaves the body is just as important as what enters the body. And it's the same thing with sound. And conversely, you can have the best digestion and the best elimination in the world, but if you don't eat, you're going to die. So what goes in the body and what goes out of the body is equally important with food. So we understand we have to have, healthy eating habits, and we also have to have healthy elimination and, release habits to be healthy. And so with sound, it's the same thing. We take sound in, and we have to listen to the proper sound, which has been researched to be, I did, 10 years of research before I wrote my book, Sound Medicine. And, the book has 48 exercises that one can practice and learn. It's the full title of the book is Sound Medicine, The Complete Guide to Healing with Sound and the Human Voice. And so this is my focus. I no longer use sound machines. After sound machines, and I developed these vocal techniques, I used the voice. For a while, I also used, crystal bowls, didgeridoos, tuning forks, shakers, gongs, a variety of instruments. But I found through the research that the number one instrument, the ultimate healing instrument in sound, is sitting right under our noses. It's the human voice. There isn't anything that can compare with the human voice. So I found that, I was pretty much wasting my time using an expensive tone generator. It's not that the sound generators of those instruments don't have any healing benefits. It's just that it's minimal compared to the human voice. And sound machines can be dangerous. So I ran across a few horror stories with some colleagues of mine and out on the East Coast that, I won't get into the details of it, that people had different problems exacerbated because they got the wrong frequency with a sound machine. And so I researched that and found that I don't want to be responsible for harming anybody. And I also learned that the reason that this sound machine and self-management auditory device was so effective and more effective than the Tesla coils and the Royal Rife generators and any other sound machines on the market is because they created a sound machine that mimics the waveform pattern of the human voice. And if you look at an oscilloscope, you know, being in recording studios, in and out of the studios for many years, recording music albums and things, I'm very familiar with the oscilloscopes and the recording process. And so I would see the waveform patterns on an oscilloscope, and machines and instruments, electronics, synthesizers, just make sine waves, and there's no healing power in sine waves. And it's the same thing with most, instruments. Now they've created some machines that create sawtooth waves instead of sine waves, and those are slightly better, but they really still don't have any particular healing power. They're square wave patterns. So they've experimented using different waveform patterns with sound machines and instruments to see what's most effective. But what they found is the human voice has a very unique waveform pattern. The human voice has what's called a complex waveform and a standing wave pattern. Now what that means is when you look at it on an oscilloscope, it looks kind of like a mountaintop range. It keeps shifting and moving, and it never quite stays the same. And so as you look at this pattern on an oscilloscope, it keeps changing and moving, somewhat unpredictably, not in any kind of a sine wave pattern. And so what these scientists did that developed this self-management auditory device that was so successful in electronics is they mimicked that frequency wave pattern of the human voice. They created a machine that replicated the waveform pattern of the human voice, a complex waveform and a standing wave pattern. So when I learned this, it really took the wind out of my sails. I was all excited being a certified sound therapist and using the sound machines. And then I find out they're like third in effectiveness. That number one is the multiples and harmonics and overtones within the human voice had the most profound effect on the human body. And I didn't conduct this research. This research was actually in my training manual, and I hadn't even gotten to it yet. It was towards the back of my training manual, and then I start studying this and realize that there isn't anything that can compare with the overtones and harmonics. They're the most effective. A distant second were acoustic instruments like the bowls and bells and gongs and didgeridoos and some of those instruments that vibrate naturally without any electronic amplification. If they can be used, they have to be used without electronic amplification or alteration, completely acoustic, and you need to know the frequency of the person that you're working with. So just working with bells and bowls and these kind of instruments without knowing what a person's personal frequency pattern is kind of useful. It's just, or useless. It's kind of like a crapshoot. You're just trying different things. It's like if you took a bowl of spaghetti and you threw it against the wall, some of it might stick. So a few strands might stick against the wall. The rest of it falls on the floor. And that's kind of what you're doing when you're using musical instruments or things to do specific sound healing. There's nothing specific about it. In fact, it can be dangerous because that's why I was saying it's good news and bad news. In the beginning, 28 years ago, when I started doing this work, people laughed. They didn't take it real seriously, and it took me a few years to even gain any credibility. But after getting over 300 testimonials from people around the United States, speaking as a keynote speaker at health and wellness conferences, getting interviewed on radio shows and television shows like CNN nationwide, internationally on CNN in 1994. And I started accumulating a reputation and started, getting the truth out to people. And my sound machine went into storage about 5 or 6 months after I invested in it and started using it because it just wasn't nearly as effective as the human voice. And the human voice is the only living instrument. The human voice is the only instrument that's connected to spirit directly without any middleman. You can use acoustic instruments And if you can use a diagnostic assessment to know what specific frequency patterns are in the brainwave of an individual, you can use these acoustic instruments, bowls and didgeridoos and such, to help the healing process. But number one, if you don't do a diagnostic assessment to know the specific frequencies that are needed, it's kind of useless. And secondly, these acoustic instruments are only about a third as effective as the human voice. So why use the instruments is what I was thinking. You know, got all these instruments and I'm thinking, well, if they're not as effective as the human voice, why even waste my time with all these, acoustic instruments? So I gradually, stopped using my, tuning forks and didgeridoos and, the various things that I had and just started focusing my energy entirely, focused entirely on the human voice. And my success just magnified both the success I personally had with sound therapy and my clients that I developed all over the world because I started traveling, as I mentioned earlier, to Europe and to Asia. And so I have, you know, people in all the cities around the United States and abroad that have practiced this and, and use whether my recordings or my teachings from my book, Sound Medicine. I put it out in a lot of ways. Being a sing and recording artist before I wrote my book, I put this information out in recordings and CDs. And I have four, sound healing music recordings. I've got four sound healing instructional recordings called the Secrets to Healing with Sound and Toning. And I was, selling those at my workshops and concerts and these things. Over the years, as I traveled, a lot of people kept saying, you need to write a book, it gives you more credibility, but I, kind of put that off. I was so busy for a number of years. And finally, I decided to start writing, and like I said, it took me about 10 years to gather all the information, case histories. It's a very easy read, Sound Medicine. It's not an academic book, and it teaches you. I was kind of frustrated because although, after I healed my kidney stones, I started reading up on the human voice and books on sound healing and toning and vocal harmonics and these things that I started studying endlessly and just everything I could get my hands on. And there were some good books about sound, so I read things by, Don Campbell, Jonathan Goldman, Kay Gardner. I also had them as guests on my radio show and TV show. I had my live radio show for 3.5 years in Los Angeles on KCLA. And then when I started traveling doing my sound therapy work, I took it to TV because I could record the shows in advance. I could record 2 or 3 shows and schedule them and then hit the road and travel. And I didn't have to be live like my radio show, which I couldn't do when I was traveling. But I did my TV show on cable television for 13 years, being of service to people that were, agoraphobic or people that, needed help, get answers to their questions. And I'd have guests, that were legitimate sound therapists and sound healers on my show. And then I eventually just started doing the show by myself because the feedback I got, they really responded to my work and thought that, my work was more interesting to them than a number of the guests that I had. So I was a little nervous about doing a show on my own without guests. But after I did it once without any teleprompters or notes or anything, I got over the hump and it was easy. And I just continued to do the show for 13 years on my own. And it was a lot of fun, and I was enabled to get the information out to more and more people. And then I started traveling more. So anyway, getting down to the nitty gritty, like I said, there's good news and bad news. The good news is people are much more open. They kind of understand that everything is energy. Everything is energy, but although a lot of people are understanding that everything is energy, people still don't connect the dots and realize there's no real difference between the words energy, sound, frequency, vibration, pulsation, energy. These are all the same facets of the same diamond, you could say. They're different facets of the same diamond because we're talking about sound. So when you measure the pulsations or vibrations of sound to determine how frequent it vibrates, That's the frequency. It simply tells us the frequency. And usually we measure it in CPS, cycles per second, or Hertz, Hz. When you see Hz, that's Hertz. Wilhelm Hertz discovered the Hertz, the measurement of sound, so that's why we call it Hertz after Wilhelm Hertz. But it's the same thing as cycles per second, how something vibrates. And so although I'm not a music therapist, we do use the musical notes because it's a perfect mathematical formula. So when I do a diagnostic sound analysis, I measure a person's frequency and their brainwave pattern because it's actually a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis. So we look at the brain through the voice because the frequencies that are in the brainwave pattern are naturally inherent in the voice. And if they're weak or missing from the brain, they're going to be missing from the voice. And so this is one of the ways that we discover the personal specific frequency of a person. And so these frequency patterns are evident in the voice, and it's very easy to understand that what's in the voice is in the brain. And I put people on a microphone and I do a diagnostic sound analysis. And there's certain questions that are designed to target different aspects of the brain. Different parts of the brain are accessed with certain questions, and each question reveals more information that's in the brainwave pattern. And I chart out by hand with colored pens the personal frequencies that I'm seeing and the columns of the particular notes and octaves. And so all I need to see is the frequencies in the voice and the octaves in the voice. That's all I need to do a very accurate and complete, successful diagnostic brain voice sound analysis. And so I don't use any sound machines for that. I use an orchestral tuner that's used to tune orchestral instruments in an orchestra, and a special microphone that I plug into it. And I have a special phone. So the first 15 years of my practice, I only did this live. I didn't do it via the phone because I didn't trust the technology. I was already fooled by a lot of the technology and the sound machine that I had invested so much money in, and went into storage after 5 months. And so I didn't do it. I only did it live in person. But I eventually discovered found a Panasonic phone that really reproduced the sound perfectly. And I guess about 12 or 13 years ago, I started doing diagnostic sound analysis via the telephone and WhatsApp and Skype and Facebook Messenger and various places internationally. And now I'm so busy doing them day and night because of the different time zones. In Europe, they're 8 and 9 hours ahead of us. So oftentimes I'm doing them at midnight, 1 in the morning, and people in Taiwan and Hong Kong, and not to mention Australia and New Zealand are about 14 and 15 hours ahead of us. So I do those oftentimes 3, 4, 5 in the morning. So I'm quite busy. I don't know if I'm sleeping in the daytime or the nighttime, but this is so important. And I'm so grateful to be able to be of service that I've healed so many things within myself, that I've helped hundreds, actually probably thousands through my book and my videos and my recordings that have been released internationally. My book, Sound Medicine, was translated into Chinese 2 years ago, and it's like selling off the shelves in China because it teaches you. One of the reasons I wrote Sound Medicine, as I mentioned earlier, I studied all these books looking for answers to the power of the voice and vocal harmonics. And I found the information, and most people involved in sound recognize when they get deep enough into it, they understand that the human voice is the ultimate healing instrument. And that there's nothing quite as powerful and as useful as the human voice. It's the only living instrument that's connected directly to spirit. But none of the books taught you how to do it. So that's why I really started, writing my book, and took 10 years to research it, write it, format it, edit it. And I originally published it under the title Overtoning back in 2005 as Overtoning with the intention of getting signed to a major publisher to get wider distribution. And that's what happened. After a year or so of it being self-published, it was picked up by a publisher, New Page Books in New York, and it was distributed worldwide. They changed the name and the cover art to Sound Medicine, which I like the title. It's probably a much more universally relatable title, although I prefer my original artwork for overtoning. But when you're dealing with publishing companies, you don't have a lot of control over what you can do. But I've since bought my publishing back after three printings through New Page Books. The publishing industry is kind of going down the tubes with all the independent publishers. It's the same thing in the music industry and the movie industry. All the independent artists and publishers are putting the old dinosaur movie companies out of business, the dinosaur publishers out of business. You know, we're moving into a new world as it's become apparent to a lot of people. So anyway, that being said, I bought my publishing back a few years ago, and so I always appreciate when people buy my book from my website rather than from big corp, the big corporations, the big A. You know, to save a dollar or two, they feed the corporations' pockets when it's important to support your local people, you know, the local healers, local therapists, local sound healers, so that, because they can't really compete with these big corporations. But anyway, enough with that. As we get back to the sound therapy and what I wanted to share with you in today's presentation is the three R's, the three types of sound. Now, let me finish up the last point about the good news and bad news. You know, nowadays, like I said, it's different from 28 years ago where people laughed at this work, and now people are understanding that everything is energy and they're more accepting of sound. But the bad news, that's the good news basically, is that people are more open-minded, and if the consciousness has changed over the last 30 years. But the downside is, like, at least in California, I don't know where you're listening from, but in California, everybody's a sound healer. Somebody, Googles something on the computer, on the internet, or reads a book, or does a workshop, and all of a sudden they're a sound healer. And there isn't an organization to monitor the ethics and standards of sound healing. I'm involved with a few elders in the sound healing community in Northern California. We've got two medical doctors and some elders in the sound therapy community that we're trying to get an organization together to monitor ethics and standards. So anybody and everybody can't just call themselves a sound healer, because they're misrepresenting this wonderful art of sound healing and sound therapy, which is very specific to the individual and must be done under the auspices of a professional, and it needs to be done after a diagnostic sound analysis. So I'm not big on organizations. I'm not a joiner. I don't belong to a bunch of organizations. But this type of organization, I think, is important to monitor ethics and standards, because, like I said, in California, there's, hundreds, if not more, so-called sound healers. And it can be dangerous. So if you're going to a sound healer, and I advise people to stay away from sound baths, because they're well-intentioned people, that are doing these sound baths. Some of my friends and colleagues are doing sound baths, and they know how I feel about this, because they don't know, even though they're well-intentioned, and they might be doing good work for relaxing, but what they don't understand is if you give a person a sound in a sound bath or a so-called sound healing session that they have an excess of in their brainwave pattern, you can exacerbate any physical or emotional healing issue that they might have. And that's when it becomes dangerous. And it's even worse if you're using any kind of electronics, any synthesizers, electronic instruments, even if it's tuned to the new tuning of 432, which I support, the 432 hertz tuning. I think it's a more accurate tuning, but ultimately it doesn't come down to the tuning, isn't nearly as important as doing a diagnostic sound analysis. Tuning is of minor importance. Most people can't even tell the difference between 432 and 440 tuning. I mean, I think 432 has more accuracy. If you do some research on it, it's pretty interesting. So I give people the choice. I set my orchestral tuner to any tuning that they want. I usually keep it at 432, but if they want 440 or 528 or whatever they want to tune to, I can adapt to that easily. But the important thing is to do a specific diagnostic sound analysis to know where people are weak and where people are backed up, because the body is a self-healing mechanism. The body can heal itself of all sorts of things if it's given a sound environment. Unfortunately, over the years, we're not in a real sound environment. We're subjected to the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, even with healthy, high frequency vegan food. Obviously, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains are the highest frequency and healthiest food. But even the soil these days is being degraded and isn't as healthy as it once was, as well as the air and the water. And so, it's important, for instance, to drink alkaline water, to have an alkaline system where viruses can't subsist in an alkaline system. So I work on various levels. I've helped people, when I had my hepatitis C and the doctors laughed at me, I couldn't heal it, and I healed it, and then they still wouldn't acknowledge it. They said it disappeared. But then I got acknowledged through the back door because several weeks later, they started referring patients to me. And they still do occasionally because they don't know what to do with their Hep C patients. There's no vaccine or cure for it, so they refer them to me. And I've worked with doctors. Recently had a Russian lady doctor. Her and her husband were both from Russia. They're both MDs, doctors. He doesn't have the Hep C. She did. They used to think it could be sexually transmitted, but my ex-wife was tested and she wasn't. She didn't have Hep C back when I did. So, it's not sexually transmitted. They've long since determined that. So I did a diagnostic sound analysis for this lady doctor and told her what frequencies, what harmonics to listen to. That's the sound in, like the food. I told you about the analogy with food and sound. So the best sound to listen to is harmonics and overtones, and that's your food to entrain the brainwave pattern. Entrainment is another vitally important principle to sound therapy. So in this short, little presentation, it's difficult for me to cover all the bases. That's why I do a lot of, free lectures and presentations and Facebook Live to explain some of the research, explain some of the exercises, explain some of the principles so people can easily wrap their mind around it and not waste their time with sound machines and external instruments when you're sitting with the ultimate instrument sitting right under your nose. All you need to do is learn how to use it. You learn how to use it properly. And then if you're serious about sound, I train, I have people, I do training workshops. Right now, we've got them online every week, every Saturday night. There's a 3-hour workshop that is only $33 right now. Normally, it's like $95 to do a 3-hour workshop out of town. When I do it in LA, it's only $75, but because of the pandemic now and the need for people to, heal themselves and get out of their houses, I'm doing it temporarily for only $33. It's like a 56% discount online every week. And so I can cover all these principles. There's 10 workshops. I used to do a weekend intensive workshop, a 20-hour workshop in Los Angeles to offer certification to sound healers that are doing it properly and specifically. And then I had an advanced workshop to teach people how to do diagnostic sound analysis with an orchestral tuner and a microphone. And that's all you need. And I do an advanced training for professionals that are doctors or chiropractors or professional healers. And that's it. I don't have multiple trainings that cost thousands of dollars or anything like that. One of the beautiful things about sound therapy is it's not only the most effective holistic modality, but it's the least expensive. To do a comprehensive diagnostic sound analysis that includes a consultation, a toning lesson, a handmade chart, interpretation of the chart, all these things is only $185. So you don't have to spend an arm and a leg to do sound therapy. A lot of people think that it's very expensive, but I haven't raised my prices more than like $10. I think in the last 20 years, I've raised my prices from 175 to 185. I've just tried to keep my prices down so as many people can get involved in sound therapy as possible. And so once you do a diagnostic sound analysis, then all you need to do is get some downloads of some harmonics, some vocal harmonics. Ideally, it's best to do it yourself, to use your own voice and even record your own voice. But the next best thing is to listen to some pre-recorded harmonics, and then that's the food going in. So the food that's coming in is the harmonics and the sound. And if we have time, I'm going to demonstrate some harmonics and show you a couple of harmonic exercises that you can start working on and start practicing. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is go over what I call the three R's, the three types of sound. The three types of sound that I call the three R's, and the first R is what most so-called sound healers are using. It's not really healing sound, it's what I call relaxing sound. Now, we all need relaxing sound. We live in this chaotic, frenetic-based society where there's so much craziness going on, oppressiveness, and it's not the greatest sound environment, but we, do our best with our sound, light, and love. We can overcome anything. But relaxing sounds can be useful and helpful, and that's what I use my bowls and bells and some of these things for, as well as the voice can be used. I teach relaxing breathing techniques, relaxing toning techniques. So relaxing sound is useful, but don't confuse it with healing sound. Sometimes we think the most beautiful sound or the most relaxing sound is the most healing sound, but that's not the case. A relaxing sound or a beautifully ambient sound is not going to help release or heal a tumor or an addiction or a serious health condition, a severe environmental allergy, or like I said, a cancerous issue or a tumor. I've worked with cancer patients. I've worked with people with all kinds of illnesses, from minor aches and pains to severe diseases. Like I said, even within myself, I've healed myself of lung disease, liver disease, and kidney disease. I got off dialysis. I got off the medication, healed my hepatitis C. I could go on and on, but I'm even more impressed with the emotional healing I've done. And that's harder to articulate, healing my issues with my father and my ex-wife and all these things. And that's why I do a sound relationship workshop as well, because sound relates to everything. When you understand the depth of the inner and the outer sound, and it affects your relationships, it affects your career, your health. There isn't anything it doesn't affect. So it really behooves you to get a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis so you can open up and release and understand all these different dimensions of your being within yourself and activate them and use them. And it starts with the diagnostic sound analysis, and then it continues with the vocal toning. And then once you learn vocal toning, you can develop the vocal toning into vocal harmonics. Okay, and so to understand that properly, I want to explain the three R's, the three types of sound. So I explained one, and that's the relaxing sound. The purpose of relaxing sound is simply to calm and soothe the body. That's the purpose of relaxing sound. It's not to heal the body. The body has its own mechanism, self-healing mechanism. And when it's not addressed properly and not focused with specificity, then the body starts kicking out too much duplicate sound, you could call it, and you get backed up with excess frequency that causes vibrational blocks in the brainwave pattern and can actually block your healing. So this is why you have to be really careful and specific in your use of sound. So relaxing sound can calm and soothe the body. It has its place, but that place is to calm and soothe the body. So that takes us to the second R, which is release sounds. Now, the purpose of release sounds is much different in its reception and its execution of release sounds. The purpose of release sounds is to cleanse the body. Now, relaxing sounds calm and soothe the body, which has its purpose in place. But release sounds cleanse the body. So similar to how we take a bath or a shower to cleanse the physical body, we have to cleanse the vibrational body and the emotional body and the astral body. And we do this with release toning, release sounds. So in case you're not familiar with toning or the definition of toning, toning is simply moving energy with the human voice. That's all toning is. Using primarily vowel sounds, but not only vowel sounds, primarily vowel sounds because most of the energy and the harmonics and overtones are within and between the vowel sounds. So within the vowel sounds exists this mystical content of the harmonics and overtones. And it's just in the same way that within the body, if you're a body worker, a massage therapist knows, how to release scar tissue from the muscles and can release this, superficial pain and stuff to get release tension and stress. So there's more relaxed muscles and you can get some release from the pain. Well, within the body, there's some things are obvious, like the muscles and the physical aspects of the body, but the emotional body is not as crystal clear, and that's where most of the roots of most problems are in the emotional body. And even within the physical and the emotional and mental body is the soul, and so it's invisible, just like the overtones are invisible in the vowels. So within the vowels, you could be looked at sort of like the physical body, and then just like within the physical body is that invisible energy and your real identity, which is your soul. Your identity is not the body, that's the covering, that's your devoted body to operate and function in this dimension. But your real essence is your soul, is your real consciousness, is the real you. And that's without gender, it's not masculine or feminine, it's not physical or emotional. It's pure sound, light, and love. Those are the only conditions. That's the real Holy Trinity, if you will, is sound, light, and love. That's what it comes down to. Everything comes down to sound, light, and love. And that's activated and within the soul and the body. And it's virtually invisible in the body, but we know, or at least we sense, we know that it exists, and it's what animates and gives the body life and energy. Well, similarly, within the vowels, the invisible power within the vowel sounds are the harmonics and overtones that exist within the vowels and between the vowels. And a big part of what I teach is how to bring out those healing harmonics in the voice and in the sound. So you have your release sounds that cleanse the body. And frankly, we're doing release sounds every day. We might not call it toning, but when you moan, when you groan, you're doing release sounds. When you raise your voice, when we get emotional, we get excited, and it could be enthusiasm, and our voice gets louder. We're releasing energy out of that enthusiasm when our voice is raised. Or when we're yelling, if we're angry or whatever, we're releasing energy when the voice is raised. These are some of the many ways that we release energy. The big ones, some of the biggest ways of releasing is laughing and crying. We know the subtle ways of humming and sighing and, whistling and making different sounds, grunts, even socially unacceptable sounds, like burping and, belching or whatever, coughing, sneezing. All these things are actually God's gifts to us. God gives us these gifts to release energy. If we weren't able to release this energy with coughs, sneezes, moans, groans, laughing, crying, our bodies would literally atrophy. We wouldn't even be able to move. We would be stuck. It's the way that we think that the voice is only used to speak through language and to maybe chant or sing through music, and that's it. But the voice is far greater than just an instrument to communicate words and language and to communicate emotions through singing and music. The voice is very comprehensive and has this tremendous ability for healing, for moving energy, and more, and for stabilizing and contributing to relationships, to consciousness, and all sorts of things. And so if we open up this wonderful instrument, instead of the fear that surrounds the fifth chakra and that rules our communication and creativity in the fifth chakra, is where the voice is. And this is what we need to access, we need to open up. If you really want to be a true sound healer, that's the way you need to go. Otherwise, you're just working superficially, on the surface. So getting back to the 3 R's, the 3 types of sounds. So these release sounds that we make, you know how good it feels after a good cry, whether it's a happy cry or a sad cry. Even though it might be sad, at the end of the cry, we feel a release. We feel lighter because we've released. We haven't suppressed and repressed those energies and emotions and locked them up within the body. We've released them, we've expressed them, and it feels better. We feel lighter after a good cry. And laughing, we used to do a laughing meditation for like 15 or 20 minutes in my workshops, over 20 years ago. Because of how good it feels. There's a real healing energy connected to laughing. But like I said, release sounds aren't particularly healing. They set the tone. Relaxing sounds and release sounds kind of set the environment and prepare us for healing. There are times that we need relaxing sounds to calm and soothe the body, and there are times that we need the release sounds to cleanse the body. So these types of things prepare us for the ultimate healing, when to go deep and heal deeply rooted disease, addictions, pain, all these things. So to get to that point, you need to understand your personal frequency pattern so you can address the sound specifically to the specific pitch, the specific note, the specific intonation of the sound or the vowel. And then you can be very, very successful using the 9 core keys to sound healing that's in my book, Sound Medicine. And my next webinar for that one is coming up, I think, June 27th. So I address all of these exercises and principles in every 3-hour webinar. So, if you do my work, or that's online now at this extremely discounted price, you can do 10 workshops if you're serious. 10 3-hour workshops is a 30-hour training. So instead of having to pay for airfare to fly to Los Angeles, hotel accommodations, rental car, all this stuff, plus $400 for the workshop, you can do it for only $33, which comes out to $297 for the whole 10 30-hour training. You'll never find anything the price that low and receive so much to get a training. And this is why I offer certification, because you're doing a 30-hour training in sound therapy and the proper principles and exercises. So anyway, I don't want to digress from the topic here, but I think it's important that you know how to access this. And you can go to my website, wayneperry.com, and go to the events page, and the link for the next series of webinars that starts June 27th through August 29th is available on the events page, as well as the current webinars go until June 20th. Both of those links are available on the events page of my website, on the events page. We had some problems with the events page last week. It was kind of down. The current events, the current link for Zoom was up, but not for the upcoming workshops. And my webmaster finally fixed it last night, and it's active now for the first day to get on there and sign up for the upcoming workshops. But anyway, getting back to the 3 R's. So the third R is the real healing sound. The third R is regenerative sound. So you have relaxing sound that you can use to calm and soothe the body, prepare the body for healing. You use release sounds to get blockages out of the way. After one does a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis, actually during that process, I teach them the toning release exercise and how to release blocked energy from the body and the brainwave pattern that goes all the way back till childbirth and our infancy. Most of the blocked energy that we have in our body and brainwave pattern takes place in the first 5 to 7 years of our life, when we're like little sponges. Psychologists know that we start to armor ourselves subconsciously after the age of 6 or 7 as a protective device to protect our vibrational energy. It's on a subconscious level. But before we start doing that subconsciously at the age of 6 or 7, whenever, it's slightly different for each soul and the consciousness of each soul. The soul doesn't even fully enter the body until we're 5 years old, so some people don't even realize that. And around that time, between 5 and 7, is when the soul fully manifests and we start to armor ourselves and protect ourselves. But until then, we're taking on all this energy, shame, blame, anger from our environment, from our parents. I mean, even though they may have loved us and given us a lot of support, we're taking on this energy that I teach you how to address in my Detox the Body Mind workshop, and webinar. And so we address all of these things. So when you understand the different facets and things that tools that you have in your vibrational toolbox, then, you know, I teach you how to use them and how to use them successfully and specifically. Sound therapy is all about specificity. You have to be specific with each frequency, with each issue that you want to work with physically or emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. That's what I love about sound therapy is you can deal on the metaphysical level. I'll be doing workshop on the metaphysics of sound. You can deal on the mental level, the emotional level, the physical level, whatever level you want to work on with sound therapy. It's amazing, and I'm so grateful to and be blessed to be able to do this work and live a life of service to people that are ready to expand their consciousness and their awareness to incorporate, you know, sound therapy into their life and to use it properly. And then once you learn how to use it properly, you can certainly share it with, you know, with others. But be mindful about who you work with because, you know, you want to get the real deal and understand the important tenets of sound therapy, which is one of the things I try to communicate in my book, Sound Medicine, is there's 48 exercises in that book. I got tired of reading all these books that had some useful information, but they didn't teach you anything. And so that's why I set about writing Sound Medicine, because I wanted to share the wealth. I wanted to teach people. You know, if I was in this for the money, there's a lot of fields I could have stayed in broadcasting and TV or radio, made a lot more money than as a sound therapist. But you know, I decided to live a life of service. I love this work. It's saved my life several times, and I want to be able to support others in the proper use of sound and harmonics. And so that's why I teach this work and why I'm so grateful for the blessings that I've had since surrendering to spirit and living a life of service. I've had so many blessings in my life that I'm so grateful for, not only the wonderful healings that I've had, but the wonderful people that have come into my life. You know, just like Brian, who set up this wonderful harmonics summit here, and other people that have just showed up over and over and over again, you know, that I'm tremendously grateful. They're usually very conscious people that are drawn to sound and sound therapy. And I never have problems with people because they're very conscious people, and you know, we resonate with each other, you know, and remember, you know, what you resist persists. So even if you don't agree with something that somebody says or something that I say, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. The proof is in the pudding. You know, dive into it, experience it for yourself. Uh, you know, trust your own intuition, your own instincts, and you can find the truth within yourself through meditation and sound toning harmonics. Those are the keys. Daily meditation, and before your meditation, use your toning and your sound, and you'll go deeper and deeper, and sound will help your meditation, and meditation will help your sound work. They go, you know, hand in hand. So anyway, back to the 3 R's. So what is regenerative sound, the third R? Well, there's two aspects of regenerative sound. I've already explained the first R, relaxing sound calms and soothes the body. Release sounds cleanse the body and can release blockages. But the real, most powerful healing sound is regenerative sound. There's two aspects of regenerative sound. The first aspects are vocal harmonics and overtones, and that's creating more than one tone simultaneously. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute, and I'm going to show you how to get started, and at least start with one or two exercises so you can start practicing it. I have a recording, The Secrets to Vocal Overtoning, that you can get, you know, on CD for like whatever, I think it's something like $18.99 or whatever. You get the download even cheaper. You can get a download, I think it's $12.99, and you can learn the secrets to vocal overtoning. So this work is not expensive. You don't have to be a scientist or a doctor or an expert in science or physics to do this work. All you have to do is focus your attention, you know, make a little time to learn some of the principles. I've taught it to seniors and I've taught it to teenagers. And I get calls from mothers and fathers of the teenagers I work with, and they said, I don't know what you did, but they're like a new person. They're, you know, they're so much healthier physically and emotionally. And, you know, I get these, you know, this feedback all the time from, you know, young people, old people, you know, that are transforming their lives with sound. And now, since I've been working internationally and, you know, in Taiwan and in China. You know, these people are very open-minded and open-hearted, and if people in this country don't get on the case with proper sound therapy, you know, everybody else is going to get ahead of us. You know, it's like we're always, you know, like in the space race, trying to be ahead of the so-called foreigners. But, you know, there's no foreigners. We're all brothers and sisters on the same path if we look at it that way and just share our love and our truth with each other. That's the important thing. And so I love traveling and seeing the same open-heartedness and the same goals and aspirations and love and awareness in these various countries. You know, we ultimately we're all going in the same direction. Ultimately, we're all going to our infinite home and to experience our infinite and eternal life. But we have to go through these karmas and these experiences. And you can use sound to accelerate your karma and go through it faster to evolve to the next level of consciousness, moving from the physical to the astral, from the astral to the causal, from the causal to the upper causal, before you get to the spiritual regions. You need to transform and transmute and go through these other levels of consciousness. And, you know, it's another thing you can understand through sound. You know, with some of my metaphysical clients, we talk and discuss these inner dimensions and inner levels, but most people are still, you know, struggling with the physical and the emotional and the outer levels. So it doesn't matter whatever level you're at, where you're on, is appropriate to your particular karma. Most people don't even understand that there's three levels, three types of karma. There's Sinchit karma, Pralabdha karma, and Kriyaman karma. When you understand the three types of karma, you can apply it in your sound work as well. But that's, you know, an Eastern philosophy rooted in, you know, Ayurvedic medicine. And they understand, you know, the Sinchit karma, the stored karma, and the Pralabdha karma, which shapes your destiny and your fate karma, you know. So anyway, there's so much to talk about. I can't cram it all in now. I'm just trying to give you a little overview of sound therapy so that you can hopefully be informed and inspired to go deeper to transform your lives, because this is certainly transformative if you use it. So the two aspects of regenerative sound, as I was starting to say, the first aspect are the vocal harmonics and overtones, which we'll get to in a minute. The second aspect of regenerative sound is applying those overtones and harmonics to the specific needs that are revealed by a diagnostic sound analysis. If you don't like have your diagnostic sound analysis, like I said, it's like throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what'll stick and what doesn't. You know, that's just a crapshoot. That's just a guessing game. So you want to be very specific. As I mentioned, this is all about specificity. So when you get specific and you see through a sound analysis, you see exactly what's weak, you know, physically, what's weak emotionally, what's healthy. You know, there's three categories: what's healthy and fine, we don't need to mess with; what's weak and needs to be supported with brainwave entrainment, the repetition of brainwave entrainment, and putting that frequency back into the brain. Sound doesn't disappear. You can remember sounds and songs from when you were a child. Remember when you were a little girl or a little boy, you can remember songs, whether it's, you know, Old MacDonald Had a Farm or Farajaka. I worked with a woman in Germany last week and I asked her to remember a song from her childhood. I didn't expect her to start singing in German Farajaka, which I remember learning in Chicago, where I grew up. Farajaka, Farajaka, dormez-vous, dormez-vous. We probably all learned that. And even though we don't speak French, and here for the first time hearing it in German. So now it's telling me, you know, it's worldwide. A lot of us learn some of these same little jingles and songs, and they don't go away. They stay in the brainwave pattern. You know, whether it's Farajaka or Old MacDonald or Sally Runs Round the Roses or whatever those little nursery rhymes were from childhood, or even pop songs. We don't forget them. They stay in our memory. And so similarly, unhealthy sounds stay in our memory. So when we identify them, you know, I help people to release the sounds that are not healthy, to release those from the body and the brainwave pattern, and then to put in with brainwave entrainment the healthy sounds, those harmonics and overtones. So it's not complicated, it's very simple. The diagnostic sound analysis reveals exactly what frequencies are weak. Then we can create those with harmonics and overtones. I have them in downloads, I have them in CDs, and that's all you need. You don't have to go through 20 levels of training. You don't have to invest thousands of dollars in musical instruments or sound machines or anything like that. All you need is a diagnostic sound analysis and a few downloads or CDs, and you're good to go. Maybe some guidance and from, you bring your car in for a tune-up every, year or so. So you might want to come in for a reassessment or, a consultation from time to time just to make sure you're in tune, because if you have some kind of traumatic experience in your life, it can throw things off. And every week or so, I have to realign people that got their frequencies all discombobulated by going to a sound bath. That's why I advise people against sound baths. And then people get mad at me that I'm trying to discourage their business. I'm not judging anybody. Like I said, some of my friends and colleagues are doing sound baths, and I don't judge them, but I have to judge behavior. I have to judge results, and I have to judge what's important and what I feel is unimportant, and reveal the truth as I know it. And then it's up to you to accept and reject. You can reject everything I'm talking about if you want. I don't really care. I care about sharing the truth and sharing sound, light, and love. That's what my life is about. And you can, do what you want with it. So, but the important thing, as I see it, is the practice and the specificity. So, when you understand the two important aspects of regenerative sound is one, learning how to create harmonics and overtones, which I can teach to anybody. Like I said, I've taught it to teenagers, I've taught it to seniors, and you can learn. There's 20 exercises in my book. We crammed in, I got 15 or 16 in the workshop a couple weeks ago, in the webinar workshop, till we ran out of time. I can do it privately, in private sessions. I can do it in the workshop, whatever. I'm flexible and I'm accessible. My phone number and email is on my website. A lot of people hide them. I had to hide my address because I get people coming over to me in West Hollywood, California without an appointment. So I did have to take my address off the website. But I don't hide my phone number or my email address. You're welcome to call me. In fact, I get so many emails a day, over 100, that I prefer people to call me. If I'm not with a client or, on the phone or with a patient, then I'm happy to talk on the phone. I can usually answer questions a lot quicker than typing out. I've never been much of a typist. So to find the emails is one thing, and then to have to type out answers to all these questions gets kind of cumbersome. So I'm sorry if I can't always get back to you by email, but I always return phone calls. I'm always available by phone, eventually, so just, keep trying. I try to make myself as accessible as possible. So anyway, let's get back to, finishing up here because I'm already over time. Thankfully, Brian said, it's okay, I can go a little over because there's nobody after me. And if you're still out there, let me finish up with some final information about regenerative sound and maybe get you started with an exercise or two. But first, let me demonstrate what I'm talking about, and then I can, get you started with a little, harmonics. So regenerative sound, as I said, the two aspects. The second part, which is applying it to the specific needs of one after they've had a diagnostic sound analysis. That's what makes the harmonics that much more effective. I can do harmonics in general, and it can have a regenerative effect on the body, but I don't like to work generally. You can get some benefit from listening to the harmonics and overtones, but it's the best way is to do it specifically and use the vocal harmonics. Keep in mind, are 3 times more effective than harmonics and overtones that are created with musical instruments or bowls and bells and this type of thing. So focus on the vocal harmonics to get the optimal benefit, and then focus on the areas of the body that need it, physically, emotionally, vibrationally, psychologically, spiritually, whatever, but get that sound analysis done. So we don't need to talk about that anymore. What I want to focus on now is the regenerative harmonics and overtones. So if I create a fundamental note with my voice, that's the first tone. That would be toning. Now, and it's different from singing. I could sing a note and go, ah, hey, hey. As a professional singer, I know a lot of voice coaches teach some exercises. Some of them are even similar to some of the exercises I teach if they're very advanced and experienced voice coach that knows what they're doing. The siren vowel exercise that I teach is like the best exercise for strengthening the voice. But we can only do so much here in this little presentation. Brian asked me to share a couple harmonic exercises with you, so that's what I'm focused on. And if you want to learn more, I'm happy to teach you these many other exercises. You can get them from the book. That's probably the best bang for your buck. For only $21.95, you can get the book Sound Medicine from my website, wayneperry.com, and there's 48 exercises in there. That's why it took 10 years to research and write it, to have something to teach people. As I said, the full title is Sound Medicine, the complete guide to healing with sound and the human voice. And so that says it all. And there's even a separate table of contents for the exercises. So after you read the book, you'll have your favorite exercises. You can refer directly to them with the second table of contents that just focuses on the pages of the particular exercises. So it's a very useful and easy to use book for those purposes. But anyway, getting back to the harmonics, if I create a fundamental note, like I just demonstrated singing it, but this isn't about singing. You don't need any singing training. Toning is about moving energy with the human voice. So if we take a vowel sound or humming or whatever it is, we can send it through the mouth or through the nose. Now, through the mouth, as I just demonstrated, it has a wider sound frequency bandwidth because it's coming through the voice. Ah! If we send it through the nose, it's more muffled because we're closing the mouth, and humming is more muffled because the sound is coming only through the nostrils. And that would sound like mm. So it's still a useful sound, but it's a bit more muffled because it's coming from the nostrils. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate the first stage of overtoning harmonics. I'm going to start with a fundamental note. We could do it with any note. We could take the note of C or the note of B flat. It doesn't really matter what the note is, but if I create a fundamental note, I'm going to send the fundamental note through my nose, and then, as I was just demonstrating, like humming, or maybe we'll do a little higher pitch because certain harmonic exercises work better in higher pitches, other harmonic exercises work better in the middle pitches, and others work better in the lower pitches. And this is something that I go through in the training, in the harmonics and overtoning workshop. So I give you a lot of guidance so that you can hear yourself better, so that you can use the best possible pitch to create the optimal harmonic sound. Okay, so you're going through, so I'm going to demonstrate the fundamental note is coming from the nose, and then I'm going to add the first harmonic or overtone with my mouth. Okay, so listen closely. As I demonstrate the sound through the nose, you'll hear the sound. You may not feel anything unless you're super sensitive. You'll just hear the sound coming through my nose. But if when I come into the second tone, the harmonic, first harmonic or overtone comes through, if you're vibrationally sensitive, you'll feel a little boost in the energy, and you'll feel it when that harmonic kicks in, and that's the regenerative power of the sound. Initially, you might not feel it much. I mean, some people don't even feel it at all. It just depends on how in touch with your body you are, how vibrationally sensitive you are. But just notice, there's no right or wrong, good or bad. This is just, like feelings. Sounds are just sounds. Feelings are just feelings. They're not good or bad. They're just sounds. And the more you explore the sounds, the more you'll discover. So anyway, I'm going to demonstrate. I'll start with the fundamental coming through my nose. In fact, I'll use my hand so it's clear, because I used to demonstrate this years ago, just going right into the harmonics. And then I learned later that people didn't really understand. They didn't have a reference point to understand that I was doing 2 and 3 tones simultaneously. They heard it and it was interesting to them, but they didn't understand the difference between toning and overtoning. And that's what I want to get across to you, is the difference between toning. Toning is just any vowel sound or series of vowels and soft consonants or whatever to move energy. And so that's simple enough to demonstrate. I just demonstrated the sound through my mouth, through my nose, but so it's easy to understand a single fundamental note. But now when I add the harmonic or overtone to it, see what you hear, see what you feel, and just see what your experience is. So I'm going to start with the one tone through the nose, and then I'll bring the second one through the mouth. Well, you can feel the energy uplift, and then I'll go back to one tone again where it'll subside. And I'll go back and forth and see if you can feel any difference. So it starts like this. That's overtoning. That's all there is to it. You know, is there, you've got your fundamental note that you start with. It's kind of like a drone in the throat, or as I demonstrated it, coming through the nose. There's different ways of doing it. So that's the simple way to understand it and to hear the overtone. Now, did you hear any sound, or did you feel anything when that second note came in? Well, I guess the mics are off or whatever, so maybe we'll um, uh, open the mics in another minute or two, and if you have some questions about this stuff, and if we have time and we can continue, I'll address and answer any questions that you have. But in any event, then at that point you can let me know if you felt that any shift in energy and felt those frequencies when that harmonic kicked in. You can feel the shift in the energy. So in any event, Brian says he could feel the difference in the energy, so that's good. Oh yeah, we have a little chat box here, so let me see what comments there are. So yeah, it was more activating, and then Alexandra, if you're still there, felt it. So thanks for your feedback, anybody. So we're going to go a little deeper now, and I'm going to show you real harmonic, interdimensional harmonics, and more than just two tones. That's the simple example of overtoning with a fundamental note and one harmonic or overtone. When I teach this in my workshop, I use something I created some years ago called the overtone spiral, which is a diagram. It shows a spiral and how every note is inside every other note. It sounds kind of paradoxical, and it kind of is. But you can take any note. I usually take a C note, and within that C note is every note in the universe is inside that C note. If you learn to bring it out, you learn to bring out the regenerative power in that note. It's similar to if you have an acorn. Inside that acorn is the oak tree. Now you don't see the oak tree, but the oak tree is inside that acorn. It has to be given the right conditions in time and space, sunlight, rain, and time and space. And that acorn turns into an oak tree. Similar with this little seed, little seedling, under the right conditions, inside that seedling is a beautiful flower. You don't see the flower, but again, under the right conditions, with the heat, the sun, the water, the rain, the time and space and whatever, that seedling grows into this beautiful flower. Well, I kind of look at the harmonics and overtones the same way. They're like petals unfolding in a beautiful flower. And they're in there at the center, the nucleus, in the fundamental note and the fundamental vowel sound, and then we birth them and bring them forth. So if you haven't heard harmonics and overtones, I'm going to demonstrate them for you, and then I'm going to leave you with a few ideas or vowels and things that you can play around with and practice and see if you can develop some harmonics and overtones, at least until you can join my workshop or read my book. If you can learn from books, there's a chapter on overtoning and harmonics in the book Sound Medicine that you can study and practice the exercises. If you can learn from a book, that's the most bang for your buck, reading the book from $21.95. If you need it auditory, if you learn more auditorily, I have it on recording. You can get the download, which is probably, actually is even cheaper than the book. I think it's just $12.99. You can get the Secrets to Vocal Overtoning, 75 minutes of like 20 exercises. So I've made this stuff very affordable and very easy for people to learn and practice. That's why I have clients all over the world. So you can learn it that way. But I want to get you started, hopefully inspired to, dive into this and keep going deeper. So, all right, so here's some harmonics, some flowering petals, if you will, some harmonics. I'm going to do not only 2 notes, but up to maybe 3 or 4 notes may come through of harmonic sound. So before I do harmonics, another thing I always do is a sound invocation, because I view sound as sacred. Sound is a sacred process. And any sound can be sacred if you honor it with a sacred intention. So before I do a sound work with any individual, before I do a healing session, before my meditation, before I go to sleep at night, when I get up in the morning, many times throughout the day, I do this sound invocation. So I'm going to do it now before I do these harmonics, because it will empower the harmonics and hopefully you'll be able to feel it. And if you know the sound invocation from my book, Sound Medicine, you can say it along with me. If you don't, just feel along with me in spirit. It's just a short little invocation and evocation. So please join me in spirit as I invoke and evoke the divine loving consciousness of the infinite spirit within, Father, Mother, God, infinite intelligence, divine love and wisdom, as a clear and open channel with sound, light, and love as my guides. I ask that the sound of light now uplift us. May the light of sound now guide and direct us. May the love of spirit embrace and protect us. And finally, may sacred sound and the sound of my soul resonate through us for the healing and harmony of all. Thanks to that benevolent tone within, Father, Mother, God, for this divine healing energy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Namaste and Sat Nam. So let us do a grounding tone to ground our energy. I always end with some lower tones to ground the energy. I used to demonstrate these tones and end on a higher frequency, and people would sometimes go out of their bodies. I had a lady who was a medium in Las Vegas go completely out of her body, and her friends were about to attack me for sending her out of her body. They couldn't revive her, and then all of a sudden she came to and just said, "Don't stop, don't stop." And her friends relaxed, and I felt a lot better because I was a little scared that she wasn't going to come back or something. But so ever since then, I always end with some lower tones, because we can always learn when we work with sound. That's some of the things that I always tell my students is, one of my mentors was named Kermit on Sesame Street that my daughter used to watch because he always used to say, "It ain't easy being green." And that may be true, but it's better to stay green and keep growing because there's a lot of smelly people out there that think they know it all. But if you stay in sound, you're going to keep growing and keep learning. And when you're green, you grow. And when you're ripe, you rot. So don't rot out. Just stay green, keep growing, and join the sound family with me, please. And what did you feel with the harmonics? So let's uh, let's open up the mics if we can, Brian. If you can unmute people, and if there's anybody left out there in this among the masses, if you haven't left, it shows that there's 8 participants still left. So if you want to turn on your mics and ask me any questions or make any comments about what you noticed, what you felt, I think you can turn your mics on. Are you still with us, Brian? Let's see. There's one
I'm
or
still
two.
here, sir. Definitely. Let's send it out there and see how everybody feels. Um,
So Alexandra said it was calming. Well, it's often calming at first. Those are a lot of times the first things that we feel is kind of a calming energy from the harmonics. But you can get a calming energy from relaxing sounds. You don't really need harmonics and overtones to feel the calming and relaxing that we get from relaxing sounds. But the more you listen to the harmonics and overtones, remember, sound doesn't go away. It's resonating in your brainwave pattern, and that's how we entrain. If you listen to some harmonics every day, especially if you can learn what specific pitches and specific harmonics your particular body needs, you'll really notice a difference. And as we put those back in and strengthen any weak points in the brainwave pattern, then you can feel much more vital and full. Because, like I said, sound doesn't go away. Some people that are less vibrationally sensitive, they may need a little more entrainment. Maybe it takes a few weeks longer than other people, but it's easily accessible. Uh, so any other comments, questions? Did we turn on people's mics yet?
I did, and everybody who's still around is able to talk. I'm not sure if everybody wants to talk, and that's okay. No worries. We haven't really done too much. Um, Calming yet vibrational. Nice, Alexandra. Um, Cindy came back on to say hello, and
Hi, whoever's on there.
we're gonna wrap up a little bit. Thanks, Cindy. Um, I'm not sure
Welcome,
if he's still there.
Cindy,
Hey,
Hey
Jamie.
and
guys,
whoever else is there. Did you
that
have
was
any
really cool.
questions or
Thank
comments
you.
or anything?
Yeah, that was great. That was wonderful. Really enjoyed that. The overtoning. It's really powerful. When we had Matthew on earlier, a lot of his work is with the deep throat singing. So he gets in, and you can really hear the layers come out through his voice too. It was really, really awesome. So thank you for sharing that with us, Wayne.
Well, yeah, I talk in my book. I share, in addition to the 20 exercises and the 20 harmonic exercise. At the end of that chapter, I talk about throat singing,
Hmm.
and I don't really recommend it for people in our culture because if you don't learn to do it properly, you can damage your vocal cords.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
and so I don't, sure, be free to explore things, check it out. Just be very careful because it's something that was established in Mongolia. It appears originally Back when I was doing a lot of research back 20, 25 years ago, the Buddhist monks get a lot of credit for the harmonics and the throat singing and overtoning. But my opinion, I mean, I could be wrong, it's just an opinion, but it seems to me from the research that I've done that the Buddhists, when they were proselytizing the Buddhist faith and traveling through China and the south of Russia and Mongolia, I believe that they picked up the harmonic throat singing from the Tuvans in Mongolia and southern Russia. I believe that that's where they learned it from when they were proselytizing the Buddhist faith thousands of years ago. And then they incorporated it as part of their practice. Now, I could be wrong. I have had some past lives back then that I've tried to access and explore, and I haven't accessed enough information to say with absolute certainty about this. But it's interesting to explore and to understand where these things come from. But culturally, I don't think it's a part of our culture in the West. I haven't found any really valuable therapeutic benefits to the throat singing. I found a little more, danger. You want to be careful and mindful about learning it. If your friend or whoever it was, I was with a client earlier today. I wish I would have been able to see what he was doing, because
Oh
if he
yeah.
teaches it in a safe way that people can learn that without damaging their vocal cords, it could be an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah,
But I teach.
I was gonna say I don't know that he teaches it so much per se, but he performs it really well. I actually got to speak to somebody like who had taken a training on the tube and throat singing, and so
Mhm.
he did a lot of that work, and he was showing me the different methods and how there's like a natural one that forms from practice, and then there's one that you can like kind of force like what you're saying. Um, so for me, that's it. Like him and I were kind of exchanging like toning and trying to see how it sounds, and he was showing me the different ways that it was created. And the one that I've kind of developed and that I use in my practices is very natural. Like it's just kind of come out of practice and from using it and working with
Well,
it.
did he talk about Humi singing? Because
Um,
one of the aspects that you may be talking about is referred to as Humi. I don't think that's pronounced. It's pronounced differently. It's spelled out kind of like Humi, but I think it's pronounced like Hurmi, something like that, singing. And it's one of the techniques for the, in fact, I have it in my book. It's pronounced Herme, actually, Herme singing. And then there's Sujut is the second form of throat singing, and then Karjura is the third type. So there's three types that I talk about in my book in Sound Medicine in the throat singing, and that you can explore. Those are the three methodologies or techniques of throat singing. But I just advise you to be cautious about it, when you learn it properly. I wouldn't necessarily use it for healing when we don't have to endanger ourselves. You can just use the vowel sounds, and the most important thing is getting the specificity of your own personal frequency. That's what I think is the most important thing. So you're working with, your specific body, because everybody's different. I've even done analysis of identical twins, and they're different frequencies. They're very similar, but they're different. They're not the same. So you want to be very specific when you're working with sound. So
okay.
anyway, back to the uh, question. Cindy, did you have a comment or question? I see you there. I don't want to shut you out here if you have
No,
something
no,
to
I
say.
just came up. I heard we're finishing up, so I figured I better come up and join everybody. But thanks so much. Sounds like it was fabulous.
Okay.
Thanks.
Um, well, so nobody else, let's see what's in the chat box here, since I'm not hearing or seeing anybody's voices here. Uh, well, just some thank yous. You're welcome. Well, anyway, did you have any comments or questions, Brian, since
No,
nobody
that
else
was awesome.
does?
You really give us a full picture of the work that you do and the way it works and how the harmonics have been a major part of your whole life. And I'm really grateful for you to share that light with us today. And I'm going to kind of, I guess, commandeer the spotlight for just a second, sir. So thank you so much, and just kind of wrap us up and send us out here. So again, thank you everybody for being on here and joining us in this space today. It was an amazing just experience, and I'm grateful for you to catch the replay and for you to share this light and these simple yet profound practices in everything that you do, whether you're creating a new ritual for your life, whether you're grounding into your own energy to feel your own centering, whether you're using the vibrations of the world around you, whether it's the restorative sounds, the relaxational sounds, the world around us is vibrational, and the energy that we get from other people interacts with us in good ways and in bad ways. And with all the things and the traumas that we're all feeling around us in the world, having your own inner harmony and being able to reflect that in your own personal glow is where we're all trying to be. And these practices and these experiences will help you to reformulate your now, so you can stand in your power and send that vibration out so you can shift your own experience. So thank you for being here, everyone, one and all.
I'd like to thank you, Brian, for putting this together. I know it takes a lot of effort to organize people and the times and the posting and the online. I know it takes a lot of work, and people like you don't get acknowledged properly in my estimation. So I want to be sure, and acknowledge you for your efforts of bringing this together. And I certainly appreciate it and want to support you in any way, that I can, so that we can get this important information out to more and more people. So thanks for your efforts and time.
Yes, Brian, can you announce a little bit about the next one coming up?
Yeah, so June 27th is our next adventure. We are going to be doing one that is centered around psychic and energy work and mindfulness and meditation and knowing how to reshape your consciousness now. We're stepping away from the sound just a little bit. I know this is through the Sound Healing Conservatory, but this is another major aspect to the sound work, is being able to understand your own deeper purpose and deeper perspective. Wayne did a great job of explaining that in the quantum universe and how we're all affected by all these sounds and all these vibrations, but the vibrations aren't always just sound. Sometimes it is just from our heart space and our healing and our feelings. And being able to control those and use those to transform your life is what this is all about. So we are going to have an amazing psychic and energy healing work practice. It's called the Inner Vision Soul Summit, and it's going to be on June 27th, and it's going to be from 12 to 7:30. And I am extending out an invitation to you guys right now, and I'd like to see you there. And also in July, we're going to have Wayne back, and hopefully a couple of the other sound healers that were on here today. And we're going to do one exclusively on sound healing and try to bring in some people from around the world to really shape and show how we can shift that vibration with sound science and with practice and with clear purpose and direction. So thank you guys so much for being on here and for sharing with us. Super excited to be putting this out into the world for everybody to share. Thank you guys. Have a great, blessed experience, wonderful day, wonderful month, year, life. Find your balance and stand in it, and we can all bring wholeness back into the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Namaste.
Namaste.